If you would have asked Sam Bankman-Fried 5 years ago, do you think you'll ever see the words United States of America versus your name? He probably would have said, no chance, that will never happen. Well, in that case, he's no different from me, who would have said the same exact thing. I went to USC, I'm educated, I don't know anyone that's ever been to prison. That will never be the case with me, yet here we are many years later. I went to federal prison. Sam Bankman-Fried, at some point, will go to federal prison. The question is, for how long? And what I want to do is spend a few minutes helping you understand what happens next for him. If I'm shivering, it's because I'm outside about to make a presentation in Los Angeles, and it's like 53 degrees. It's freezing. I don't know how it's unbearable, frankly. But I'm going to make a presentation to a hedge fund about the consequences of cheating, what life in federal prison is like, and how people can make short-sighted decisions without considering how it will influence the rest of their life. So it's really the good time to make this message, considering what Mr. Fried is going through right now. Presuming he's extradited back to this country, he will really begin to feel the wrath of the criminal justice system and how the government, the stakeholders, the probation officer, the prosecutor, an eventual judge, will seek to judge him and fillet him for the worst decisions and experiences of his life. It's in his interest, presuming he wants the shortest sentence in the most favorable institution, meaning a low security prison. He will have to get 10 years or less for that. It's in his interest to understand the stakeholders and their perception of him, of an inexperienced executive who is way over his skis, who made short-sighted decisions, and in so doing hurt people, created victims who lost a whole lot of money. That is their perception of him, not of some whiz kid, of some genius whose parents were educators at Stanford, who went on trips with Tom Brady and other celebrities. That may be the perception of himself. That may make him feel better, but it is not the perception of the stakeholders. So any defendant traversing this system would serve themselves well if they put themselves in the shoes of these people, and then immediately, like today, wherever he is, he should begin to understand these stakeholders and begin to create a narrative or message that seeks to influence them positively. The problem is so many defendants, from Elizabeth Holmes to Sunny Balwani to the Chrisleys, they tend to focus on themselves, how their own life is imploding. He will focus on his inexperience, how he relied upon experts to guide him. No difference from Elizabeth Holmes. That's the message that we most likely will expect from him, because his goal now is self-preservation mode. He doesn't want to go to prison, and the surest way to not go to prison is to be acquitted at trial. And to get there, he's going to have to blame other people. He's going to have to excuse his conduct. I said in a TikTok video last week, it was George Santayana who said, those who do not learn from the past are doomed to repeat it. It's my prediction, in a freezing day here in Los Angeles, December 13th, that Fried will go down the same path as Elizabeth Holmes, as Sunny Balwani, as the Chrisleys, not learn from those experiences, namely that blaming other people, excusing his own conduct is not a path to a better life, a better future. He won't learn from that. He'll go down the same path, and I suspect he'll be convicted. And because of the massive losses, together with the sentencing guidelines that will be through the roof, technically the guidelines with the losses, they could bury him underneath that prison, he's putting himself on the same path as these other executives to face a very long time in prison. If I were guiding him, I'd encourage him, beyond just understanding the stakeholders and their perspective, I'd encourage him to surround himself with people who are truth tellers, who are willing to help him understand what comes next, the consequences for every decision that he makes. He needs truth tellers in his life. Too many people who are wealthy or rich or famous, who have had people kowtowing to them in predictable fashion for so long, they have enablers around them who tell them exactly what they want to hear because it makes them feel better, yet it's not advice that really gets them further to their end goal, which is emerging from this experience with some dignity and a plan, and hopefully a prison term that isn't 10 or 20 years in prison. Many defendants don't work openly with their lawyer, so that's a decision that he has to make right now. Is he willing, or is he even capable, of articulating to his lawyers what happened, how this started, where it went rogue, what he could have done better, the consequences of his conduct? Others who may be involved in this process, because oftentimes the first thing the government may ask you, because they tend to get to the ringleader first, one of the first questions the government asks is, Mr. Fried, is there anything you'd like to tell us? And that's a telltale sign for, would you like to cooperate? Is there any information you can give us about other executives within this company because many defendants want a coveted 5K1 letter, which is a cooperation agreement or letter from the government articulating that because of the defendant's assistance, they are worthy of a shorter prison term. So the decision he makes now will influence the rest of his life. So he has to speak openly and honestly with his lawyer. But the problem is so many defendants, especially those who have never made bad decisions or been involved in the system who have never introspected, they don't know what the hell they did. So they're not really in a position to articulate it. They may want to, but they don't know how to. So a consequence of that is lawyers get half-truths, or defendants feign ignorance, they blame other people, and the lawyer's not really equipped to help you. Lawyers frequently get bad raps, so to speak, but oftentimes it's not the lawyer's fault. They could probe better, they could get more information, but oftentimes they can only deal with what the client gives him, and I suspect it's going to be, I did not have bad intentions, I did not mean to commingle funds, I was a very young executive, this happened too far, too fast, I did not have bad intentions, it was other people, no different from Holmes, Balwani, Chrisley's, and others. Now that he's involved in this system, he will be supervised by a pretrial services officer who will require him, he's going to have to report to him or her routinely. They could put a bracelet on him for fear that he could leave the country, presuming he gets bond once he gets back here, and I suspect that he will. He'll need permission to travel. It would be in his interest to work. Now, a lot of people are going to say, dude, this is crazy. Elizabeth Holmes didn't work for 4 years before her sentencing. I think that was a weakness. Even though he's going through this self-imposed trauma or tragedy, it's essential because he's so young, like Elizabeth Holmes was. It's essential because he's so young that he begins to build a record as a law-abiding citizen. We know the stakeholders, the prosecutor is going to articulate that he only built this because of his criminal and fraudulent behavior. Therefore, any wealth that he had was done by fraud. He didn't earn it legally. Therefore, at the ripe old age of 30, the government will argue that he's never earned a lawful dollar in his life. For that reason, whether it's a friend or a buddy, don't know if he can quite drive for Uber or Lyft. He could, he should try. It's all honorable work is. He needs to begin working to demonstrate to a judge that he can earn a living as a law-abiding citizen. Our team has attended sentencing hearings where federal judges have looked at a defendant and said, hey, bud, so they don't say, hey, bud, actually, but they'll say, so what have you been doing for 3 years? You've been under indictment for a white-collar crime. You've hired all of these lawyers. You've spent a lot of money. Your actions have created victims. You're not working? What are you doing to make money? How are you going to pay these people back? You sit at home all day doing what? No bueno. So it's in his interest, even now, as he's enduring this self-imposed trauma, that he looks to work and create a new record. And I assure you, he has some relationships out there, as Elizabeth Holmes did, that would be willing to hire him and give him an opportunity to work. So he should work. He should begin working openly and honestly with his lawyers. Probably start with writing out the story of his life, how he got here, what he's learned, what he would do differently, and articulate it in a way that's believable. I presume his high-priced lawyers will do what high-priced lawyers are paid to do, which is to say, we're going to fight this. The government doesn't have a full understanding. They've overreached. This could have been handled civilly. Lawyers are going to do what they're paid to do. This could take years. It could take a very long time for a potential trial to play out. Now, I predicted that he'll go to trial, most likely lose, though there is an outside chance that he eventually pleads guilty if he gets a prison term or recommended prison term that is palatable. And then, frankly, anything 10 years or less is palatable with good time and First Step Act and early release programs that exist. I mean, my partner did 26 consecutive years in federal prison. He's crushing it and thriving it, and he came home strong. So any prison term is doable, though it's in his interest to assess what could he do to get out more quickly. And of course, that starts with accepting responsibility. The fewer resources the government has in his case, the more likely they could be to recommend a shorter prison term because they haven't spent as much time. So if I were guiding him, knowing the odds of him prevailing at trial are zero or pretty close to zero, knowing the evidence the government has, I would encourage him to go full tilt right now, full stop, and say, I did it. I accept full responsibility. I blame nobody but myself. As a result of my shady, greedy, criminal, short-sighted actions and making choices without considering how it would influence my life, but moreover the victims I created, I want to make amends, I want to accept responsibility, and I want to stop the facade right now and accept full responsibility for my conduct. Like, whoa, who does that? Nobody did. Skilling didn't do it. Holmes didn't do it. Nobody does that. He has an opportunity to be different and follow the Santayana path. Remember, Santayana said, those who do not understand history are doomed to repeat it. I would encourage him, and I'm not even a lawyer here, but I'm a dude that went to prison, and I know what it's like to go to prison and leave your family at home and wonder what the rest of your life is going to look like. He's in crisis. The way to get out of crisis is to say, I'm sorry, it is only my fault. Here is how I will do better. That is what I would encourage him to do, because if he can do that, guess what? The dude's already in jail right now. Now, you may be thinking he's not in jail. He's in the Bahamas. They're looking to bring him back. When you are the target of a federal investigation, you think about it 24 hours a day. You may be on a yacht in a beautiful home, traveling first class, driving in your beautiful car, but you are in prison. You are confined. You think about it 24 hours a day. So it's in his interest to get this show on the road, to accept responsibility and lay out a path that articulates how he will do better, make amends, and somehow, some way, make his victims whole. And he has opportunities that, frankly, myriad people have never had. Jordan Belfort, Frank Abagnale, even me to a very small degree have had opportunities to use our asset through this, to use our experience through the system as an asset that could help ourselves and help other people. So he's further ahead than the lion's share of people who do lose everything. Their reputation is destroyed. They have no network. They have nobody that's interested in their story. There are people that would be interested in his story, books, movies, documentaries, whatever it may be. So he's so far ahead of the lion's share of people who are going through this process, and I'd encourage him to not waste that, to feel gratitude for the love and support of his family, people who are standing alongside him rather than squander it, blame, and excuse. So I'm going to go and give this presentation to this hedge fund in a few minutes, and I'll close with, again, quickly what happens next. He'll come back to this country. He'll be on pretrial supervision. His lawyers will most likely say they're going to go to trial. It can play out for months, years. If he goes to trial, it's probably an acquittal with sentencing guidelines that could be 10, 20, 30 years in federal prison, or he can choose to do the right thing. I'm sorry, this is how I do better. I accept full responsibility for my conduct. Let's work on a path that can make these victims whole. And in so doing, he can get on the right side of the government, help them understand the culture that enabled this to happen. He can shed light on the cryptocurrency and how these things happen, because we don't want this to happen in the future. So he could be like on a one-way ticket to helping them understand and untangling things that happen so they don't happen in the future, or he can go down the Holmes, Balwani, Chrisley path. Thank you so much for watching this kind of random video out of the blue. 12 minutes, I'm going to go speak. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.